like to welcome you all to the September 24th, 2008 public hearing of the Board of Architecture Review. We appreciate all of you in attendance here today. This evening we have several new appointees to the board, and I would like, my name is Derek Wingfield, I'm the acting chair, and if I could, I'd like the other board members to introduce themselves, please.
Nathan Billings.
Greg Hosfield.
Rob Magrish.
Thank you, gentlemen. The board was established by zoning ordinance in 1958, and our first historic district was Gratz Park. We now have a total of 14 historic districts. The board, which is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Urban County Council, is part of the Division of Historic Preservation. The Preservation Office maintains a full-time staff to assist you with your projects. The board encourages you and recommends that applicants use them as a resource. The Preservation Office is located at 101 East Vine Street, room 220. It is our procedure to consider applications in the order in which they are listed on our agenda. In each case, we will have a presentation by the staff, hear any additional comments from the applicant. The board will then ask questions or make comments regarding the application, and then hear comments from any other interested parties present. The chair will then ask the board members to enter a motion. If you wish to address the board this evening, please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the public record. We'd also ask that you would write your name on the sign-in sheet by the door so that the information may be recorded correctly. There are also certain items that the staff can approve without having applicants come before the board. This evening there are 12 applications in which the property owners already have certificates of appropriateness. I'll need to read those into the record briefly, quickly for posterity's sake. At 323, these first four in the Aylesford Historic District: 323 Clay Avenue, renovate structure; 322 Grosvenor, renovate dormer. At 321 Linden Walk, replace 3 tab shingles with dimensional shingles. And at 398 Linden Walk, replace second-story windows, replace tongue and groove porch floor. In Belcourt, there are 3 staff approvals: 221 Bell Place, replace deteriorated tree; at 257 Bell Place, replace deteriorated tree; and at 611 Russell Avenue, replace porch floor. Cadentown, at 757 Caden Lane, renovate structure. In Mulberry Hill, at 353 North Limestone, replace broken sign stoop and walk at front door. In the North Side Historic District, at 424 West 3rd Street, repave driveway and replace curbing. In South Hill, at 249 South Limestone, renovate porch addition. And in the western suburbs, 647 West Main Street, replace sign. We'll now proceed with the review of applications for certificates of appropriateness. This evening I have 6 cases. The first one is in South Hill at 249 South Limestone, rework south wall of addition and regrade side yard. Is that applicant present?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
You're okay, that's fine. If you would, sir, come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Yes, my name's Reese Reinhold, and I live at 244 South Ashland, and I'm here for the property at 249 South Limestone.
Thank you, sir. Staff has recommended approval as submitted. Are you okay with that?
We had a little bit of a mix-up on the elevations. I have a new elevation, which staff also had, but we kind of put the wrong elevation in. I did 3 of them, and if I could submit that to you all, I've got copies of it, if you all could look at that.
Certainly.
Because what we have, the elevation we have on there is the existing elevation.
Okay.
I mean, the existing roof line, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's the existing roof line.
but it shows that.
Right. This one's just a little taller. This one. Right.
Thank you. That's okay. We'll be okay. We can share. Ms. Armstrong, is this your case? No, Mr. Giannacchio. Yes. Have you had a chance to review the elevation?
Yes, I have.
Does this change any of your findings or recommendations?
That's fine. That's
Okay,
no change.
fantastic. Aside from the new elevation, sir, are you okay with staff recommending approval?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Anyone in the audience would wish to speak to this case this evening? Okay, hearing no comments, Chair would entertain a motion.
Chairman, I would move in case number 11670249-C, located at 2.9 South Limestone, that it be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
The next item on our agenda is in the North Side Historic District at 324 Hampton Court, enclosed rear porch. Is that applicant present?
No.
Mr. Jockey, have you had do you know if the applicant is aware of the staff recommendations?
Sorry, I didn't hear. I couldn't understand what you said. Yeah, I'm the applicant.
You're okay.
Applicant is here.
Sorry, I was a little late.
You're fine. If you want a moment to look over the staff report,
She emailed it to me.
Okay.
So I have had a chance to review it.
if you would come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Erin Callahan, 324 Hampton Court.
Thank you very much. Staff's recommending approval with a single condition, which is the head jam and sill details for installation of the fixed panel be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to purchase of any required materials. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. That's fine.
Excellent. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case? Okay, Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to case number 08730-329-A, located at 324 Hampton Court, I would move to approve as submitted with the following condition. The head jam and sill details for the installation of the fixed window panel be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to the purchase of such materials.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, ma'am. Our next case is also in the North Side Historic District at 101 Hampton Court, construct site elements. Is that applicant present?
Mark Ishmael with Fox Hill Company, representing the client. 147 East 3rd Street, Lexington, 255-1429.
Thank you very much. Have you had a chance to read staff's findings and recommendations?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with them?
Two of the items we are, with a slight consideration about the second one. The first item we'd like to discuss. The second and third items I think we can substantially accept.
Okay. Staff is recommending disapproval of several of the requested items. Perhaps we'll go ahead and have the staff present the case
Okay.
to get everybody even playing field, and
Okay.
call you right back up. Thank you very much. If staff could proceed with the presentation for this, that'd be great. We can do that. It'll just take a moment. We'll come back to this briefly in just a moment. In Cadentown at 757 Caden Lane, it's an application of struct an addition, garage, and paved areas. Is that applicant present? If you would give us your name and address, please.
My name's Lori Wagner Brummagen. I live at 3177 Glenwood for the property of 757 Caden.
Thank you very much. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and recommendations?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with them?
Yes.
Excellent. There are two simple conditions: that final details for the door, windows, and siding, trim work come back to staff, and any final details come back to staff. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case? Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to case number 029600757-C, 757 Caden Lane, I'd recommend that the board approve as submitted, except for the two conditions recommended by staff set forth on page 6 of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next, let's see. 323 Clay Avenue, add change openings, construct porch, paved drive, and parking. Is that applicant present?
No. The applicant's not here.
This one will probably require some discussion as well, so we'll come back and see if the applicant arrives.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Ginocchio. At 223, 229 Miller Street, Northside Historic District, construct single-family home. Is that applicant present? Sir, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Ben Gallagher. Residence is 265 North Limestone, Lexington 40507.
Thank you very much. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and recommendations?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with them?
Everything except for the recommendation on the fence. I'd like to request that the rear fence be allowed to be 8 feet tall per Kentucky Residential Code. I know the historic guideline is 6 feet, but in this case, given the properties that it backs up to being industrial, I think 8 feet is appropriate. I'll just make that request.
Certainly. I think what we'll do is go back to the previous case that we'll need to discuss and give you a full hearing so that everyone's very familiar with the case. So you give us just a little time here. We'll call you right back up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to 101 Hampton Court. I think now we're ready for the staff presentation. Thank you, Mr. Ginocchio.
In September 26 of 2007, the board granted the applicant COA to demolish addition, construct addition, masonry, metal walls, patio, and walk, and the work is now virtually complete, except for the walls, which have not been started. At this time, the applicant is requesting that the board grant a COA to construct a 6-foot-high wood privacy fence along the north and south property lines of the rear yard and along the side yard to the right of the construction. Construct an 8-foot-high wood privacy fence along the rear property line. To construct a 2-foot to 2-foot-8-inch high retaining wall of precast units along the public walk and down the driveway to the face of the porch, and to construct steps adjacent to the public walk, the main entry walk, and the walk to the side yard gate of dimensional pavers. The site plan submitted depicts the location of proposed walkways, retaining walls, and fencing. Since the fencing is to be in the same footprint as the previous approved masonry metal walls. The applicant has included a page noting this is the proposal which currently approved. For a visual of the approved, see the attached approved 9/26/2007. That's your colored sheets. The proposed retaining walls to be constructed at the back edge to the public sidewalk extends from the north property line to the main entry street. Steps where it turns right angles. If I could see the site plan. Randy? Maybe I could show you easily. Yeah. Can you just enlarge this little section here? good. The retaining wall starts at the north property line, comes across to this area right here, 2 foot of height, and then at 2.8 down to the steps. And then the little wing wall that steps back to 2.8 and comes back to the porch of the structure. These steps adjacent to the public walk as well as to the entry walk and the wall of the side are proposed to be constructed of dimensional pavers. So this is dimensional pavers here up to the main house entry steps and all around to the side. We've listed the guidelines for your reference. The findings, the proposal to include the rear and side yards of this property with a wood privacy fence is appropriate within the guidelines. However, the manner by which same is accomplished requires careful considerations. Guidelines 13.2 notes that new boundary definers should be compatible with principal structures on the property as well as surrounding and historic properties. In addition, new boundary definers should not be visually dominant or intrusive as stated in Guidelines 13.3. Staff finds that the installation of any style of fencing in excess of 6 feet in height to be incompatible with the residential character of the site and the historic district. Staff also finds that the extension of the 6-foot-high side yard fence up to within 8 feet of the structure's front porch is not in accordance with Guideline 12.6. If indeed the desire is to maintain the side yard fencing at 6-foot height, the more appropriate location for returning the fence over to the structure from the east property line would be at the same location as the original wood fence, which is 60 feet back from the front property line. Any 6-foot-high fencing that comes forward of the rear southwest corner of the structure to the north of this property should have its top 24 inches be of a more open lattice design. The proposal to drastically change the grade along the public sidewalk of the property by construction of retaining wall some 24 to 32 inches in height and bringing some 22 to 30 inches of fill would be inconsistent with the Guidelines 15.2 that states new landscape land features or alterations to existing landscape land features should be compatible with surrounding historic properties and principal accessory structures on the property. Also, the proposed use of a manufactured dry-laid product would be inconsistent with other brick or concrete retaining walls or curbs in this court. The proposed use of dimensional pavers for the steps adjacent to the public walk and the walkway to both the front entry and the side yard gate is found inconsistent with the guidelines. Guidelines 12.3 state significant historic sidewalk street patterns and paved material should be retained, maintained. The sidewalks throughout the court are constructed of concrete. Recommendation: staff recommends disapproval of the request as submitted to use manufactured dimensional stone for the construction of the retaining wall, to deny the use of manufactured dimensional pavers for the construction of the walkways, and item 3, construction of an 8-foot-high wood fence along the rear property line. Staff recommends approval to construct a 6-foot-high wood fence to enclose the rear and side yards of the property, provided the top 24 inches of the fence when it comes forward of the rear southwest corner of the structure to the north of the property have a more open lattice-type design, 2, construct a retaining wall along the back edge of the public walk and along the north edge of the driveway curb, provided the wall is constructed of brick or concrete and the wall is no higher than 18 inches above the sidewalk or driveway. And 3, to construct in the concrete steps and walkway in the same footprint as shown on the drawing, on the condition that the final drawings or details come back to staff for review and approval prior to the issuance of the COA, and if any other agency or LFUCG of the LFUCG requires changes such as setbacks or retaining wall, runoff water, etc., come back to staff for review. Representative is here.
Thank you, Mr. Ginocchio. Sir, if you'd like to come back forward. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, I'd like to address the items in reverse order because we're pretty much willing to accept them in reverse order.
Certainly.
So the third item, we're accepting of the concrete sidewalk and the concrete steps in the same pattern. Can you put the plan back up and zoom in on the same area? On the next item, which is the retaining wall, we'd like to have one change in the retaining wall. We can do a 18-inch brick retaining wall. What we'd like to have, though, is where the sidewalk, her sidewalk.
Oh, okay. It's underneath.
Sure.
Underneath.
Right here. Okay. Right there. And there, where the sidewalk intersects the street. The yard slopes up, so we'd like the opportunity, we can keep it 18 inches above the paving maximum, all along that edge. But from here to there, we'd like the opportunity to raise it from 18 to 24 so that it's, the grade is not below where the grade of the sidewalk is. Now, this grade is probably higher than, actually 24 inches above that grade. We're willing to have this slope off in that direction, but instead of having it slope in two directions, having a contour line run like that, we'd like to see if we can get that. On the last item, which is the fence, the applicant would still like to pursue an 8-foot solid fence in her rear yard along Ross Street. Primarily, we'd like to pursue this being that, and we have some photographs of other properties on that street, that there are other fences on that street that are above 6 feet tall. Concerning the fences in the side yards, she would like to pursue the 6-foot fences in the side yards without the lattice work.
How far forward does she want to bring that fence in if she's not going to do the lattice?
We'll
Does she want to go back to the original fence line, or does she still want to come all the way forward?
At this point, we'll stick with where the, at this point, I think we're going to stick with just where it's drawn right now. We may reconsider that. But that puts it in front of, that encloses all of her windows in her yard that aren't up on the porch. And it's a single individual living there. It's a privacy and security issue.
So she still wants to bring it forward.
To the line that's shown.
The wall A, what's designated as wall A?
Right here. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've worked through the conditions there.
Okay.
Mr. Billings, do you want to continue?
You said you had some pictures of other 8-foot fences?
Yes. These were submitted in the original certificate of appropriateness application. These are on roll.
If you actually hand them up to Randy down there, he can put up on the monitor.
First building in Hampton Court on your right. This is behind it.
This is Ross Alley that runs between 3rd and 4th.
Yes. So this individual is 6 foot tall. This is, I think, the fence that's, this is the fence that is behind the first, it's a condo building. It's on the right, left-hand side as you come in. It's a beige, tan-colored brick with large columns. There's another. Where's this one? Okay. And then there's one more. This one, it's still above 6 feet. You can hardly see that. It's back in there, but it's 7 feet or so, or actually. All of these, I think, all of these are on Ross. This one's approximately 7'9", 7'6". The next one. And again, it's primarily a security issue for privacy security. This one's an 8-foot fence for an individual, single individual living in the house.
Are there wood plank fences on both sides of this property on Ross Alley?
No, the Ross Alley, there are houses that face the alley.
On one side, and there's the backyards for the
Right.
Hampton Court.
Correct.
On the Hampton Court side.
Correct.
If you were at Ross and you look at the back side of this property, what are the fence lines to either side of this property?
Well, do you know what those are? I don't know. Are those? But what's directly on each side?
Ma'am, if you would, come forward and give us your name and address. So,
This is the applicant.
My name is Candace Coleman, and it's my house that I'm renovating at 101 Hampton Court.
thank you.
Yep. And there was a question?
If you're looking at the back of your property
Yes.
from Ross Alley,
From Ross Alley, looking at my property.
looking at the back of your property. that's
Okay.
correct. To the right and to the left, what are the fence lines on those two properties?
That would be my side fence lines. My interior fence lines.
Not the interior, on the two properties next door to yours.
Right.
They have fences along the back property lines
They do.
adjacent to the alley. What are those fence heights?
They are 6 feet.
Both those are 6 feet?
Right. Right.
The ones that are 7, 9, 7 foot, where are they located further down the alley?
They are about 3 houses down.
Mr. Giacchio, do you know the age of those fences that are there?
No, not really. I mean, some of those fences look like, some of my fences look like before they were replaced, which were 20 years old or so.
You don't go to the questions.
You done for now?
You don't go through the questions.
Okay. Mr. Magrish?
I just had actually a
clarification from Martin. When you were talking about the 6-foot fence with the lattice work and the upper 24 inches, you were talking about a 6-foot total height, not 6 plus 24.
That's correct. It'd be 4 foot of privacy, and the top 2 would be lattice.
Okay.
Similar to what they had approved for that section of the side yard when they were going to do a wall. The wall was going to be 4 foot high, and then the grillage work was going to be 2 foot on top of that.
Okay, I see. Would there be a possibility of doing a 6-foot with a 2-foot lattice open area at the rear of the property? It would still create an 8-foot total, but the top 2 feet
That's
would be...
that is what they had, more or less had approved
originally.
earlier for the back. It was going to be a 6-foot brick wall with 2 foot of lattice above that.
Okay, but that is a possibility.
I can show you.
Oh, that's all right, Martin. I think I can sort
Yeah,
of
that scenario is what was reflected in the board's previous decision
Okay.
of 6 and 2 on
So
the
that
rear.
still would stand?
They're changing the materials, is hence it's before you all today. But the previous decision was for masonry up to 6 feet with more transparency
Right.
in the upper 2 on the rear alley elevation.
Even though it's a change of material to wood, would that scenario of solid and transparency still be something that could be considered?
It's certainly within the board's purview to consider, absolutely.
Okay. As far as the little retaining wall on the street side, I was curious, is there a particular reason why that's needed? In other words, is there erosion problems or something like that going along
The
there?
yard blows off severely, and there is a retaining wall directly adjacent, and that retaining wall is 18 inches.
And that's the 18-inch?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's a
where-
brick material?
Correct.
So
16.
16 inches. So basically what you're saying is to just sort of continue the line of that retaining wall across the front of the property?
Absolutely. So,
Those are the questions I had about
do you
it.
have any questions?
I do. I have one question about the same topic, actually, the retaining wall
Okay.
at either side of the steps. Excuse me. In your suggestion to go up the hill,
Correct.
do you have a maximum height above the elevated sidewalk in mind? How much higher
We'd at
would
least
that
like to
retaining wall
make
be?
it flush with the upper sidewalk that exists.
At least
We're going
flush.
to take that sidewalk up and, put in new sidewalk, because that sidewalk's deteriorated, and we'd at least like to bring it up flush with it so that, again, we don't have to slope the ground in 2 directions.
At least flush. Do you have a maximum height in mind or a range?
I can address that. My name is Greg Martelli. I'm with Fox Hill. I'm with Mark. The slope would have to be manipulated, and right now, the slope does not engage the stairs, so what you have is, you were speaking to erosion, it's basically untenable to maintain the slope.
Sure.
So the concept is to address and mimic the fence or the retaining wall on the adjacent property to the north at that height, but then to engage the stairs as they go up. The stairs are 8 inches in rise, so we would need at least 24 inches to engage the top tread.
8 inches?
So that makes that upper, makes the upper sidewalk approximately 24 inches, give or take an inch, of the sidewalk on the street. So that sidewalk would be approximately 24 inches above that sidewalk, and that would be within an inch or so of, where we'd like to take it.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
I don't have any additional comments. Mr.
Do we have any comments from the audience? I might have a couple further ones, but
I'll ask him just a sec.
I want to
You're
go see
okay?
if there's audience
Okay.
comments because I want some follow-ups after that.
I would like to address the board. I have issues with my security at this property on that faces Ross Street. And I think that an 8-foot fence on Ross Street is entirely appropriate to address this issue. I am certainly willing to have a 6-foot side yard fences, you know, but I don't think going 6 feet and then an additional 2 feet of perforation, whatever, if that's because I've gone with a wooden fence now rather than a masonry one, I think that will just be an enabler for folks to come over the fence. Security is a huge issue for me. I went to the police today and got an incident report of Ross Street and Hampton Court for the last 3 years, and there's over 500, most of which are residents or people from Ross Street.
I'm Greg Martelli again. I would like to address, and I appreciate the accommodation made by the BOAR on the 8-foot fence that was initially approved. When the decision was made to change the materials, I would just like to talk to the fabric and the quality and the durability of the materials themselves. At the point the decision was made to go with a wooden fence, I don't think I would recommend to my client that we build a wooden lattice. I know that we could build a durable masonry pierced fence that would perform for a long period of time sufficiently and adequately to her needs. If we build a wooden lattice back there, I will be personally maintaining this fence in 3 to 5 years, and she'll be very unhappy with whatever is done. If I'm sure you're all familiar with wood. When wood's in contact with wood and it gets wet, it rots prematurely, and any lattice, unless we're using some South American hardwood, is not going to perform well back there. So at the point that the material was made, that's why I would advocate that's one of the motivations for going with a solid fence back there, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd wish to speak to this case?
Thank you.
Thank you very. Yes, please. Come forward and give your name and address, if you would, please, sir.
My name is Doug Steffen. I live at 103 Hampton Court, which is the building that's Mr. Ginocchio is depicted on the north side of 101. And I wanted to, well, first of all, thank Candace, and I appreciate all the work that she and Mark and Greg have done on the house and trying to fix it up and make it a better place, and also your all's service and the opportunity to address the board here. I haven't done that before, but I wanted to speak to a couple of the recommendations that Mr. Ginocchio mentioned, specifically the wall that's along Candace's north side, the one that's closest to my house. In the recommendation, the staff recommendation, I know y'all have a copy of this, but I went ahead and took the liberty of marking it for your benefit.
Thank you.
Mr. Ginocchio had outlined on there that really, if the case wants to put a 6-foot wooden fence, the most appropriate and most historically appropriate place for that location, according to staff, and obviously they've studied on this, but would be on the original fence line, the original wood fence. And I know they have this equipment here, but this has been flashed up a couple of times. But I took the liberty of highlighting where the original wood fence was. I moved here in 1985, and the fence has been like that since before I moved into my house. And I think Mr. Ginocchio and staff's recommendation is that setting it back to the original line was most consistent and appropriate with the historic nature of Hampton Court, which of course was established in 1907 as probably one of the first subdivisions in Lexington by Mr. Stahl when he built the original buildings. And what that does, according to staff, is puts the fence at 60 foot back off the front line. And the reason why I think they recommended that, in my interpretation of the report, is you can see if you put the front fence back, it makes for more continuity with the other buildings on Hampton Court. There are no wooden fences that come out that far as is proposed in the plan on any of the other residences on Hampton Court. And particularly the problem in relationship between 101 and 103 is by building a fence, a 6-foot fence along between the two buildings, it's gonna, you can see where the earth has been spread, and that's approximately the property line. There's no dispute about the property line at all. But if you come out where the soil is, putting a 6-foot high wooden fence along the property line out to the front porch, near where Candace has marked it, or where it's been marked on the plat, it essentially eliminates light, air circulation for 103 Hampton Court. And I believe what Mr. Ginocchio and the staff indicated, that would be not compatible, not appropriate, and inconsistent with the general nature of this historic neighborhood. Just to show you how narrow this is a photograph of the little side fence as it now looks between our brick wall and what is our 6-foot wood fence that extends back across the alley. And you can see that's about a 3-foot, 3.5-foot space, which of course is quite small. And this is actually a photograph that was made before the fence came down. Unfortunately, I have 3 of them, but it actually shows the old fence. We can share. If you could share. Sure. It shows the old fence going off to the photo's left side here. It's sort of an angle, which is consistent with the plat diagram that Mr. Wingfield's looking at, where there's sort of an angle off of where the old fence used to come, and then it would come straight across over to basically the chimney on Candace's house. Of course, with the old location of the wooden fence, even though it was 6 feet, it allowed for air and circulation and light to flow between the houses, consistent with the way that they were designed. And so I would ask the board if you might consider, again, staff's recommendation was that the most appropriate location for that section of front fence would be on the old property line. In the alternative, the staff said, well, for that stretch of fence, which was previously marked as Section C, if I may, I'll approach the board here and hand this to you. This Section C is the area that's between 101 and 103. And the original approval in September 2607 that Mr. Ginocchio referenced was for a 4-foot masonry fence with a 24-inch, 2-foot lattice. And of course, the new proposal is for a 6-foot high solid wood in that Section C, which of course blocks out the light and the otherwise nature of the neighborhood. And what Mr. Ginocchio, the staff indicated was, well, I guess if fall back, if you don't go to the original line of the fence, which is 60 foot back, as they marked, as an alternative, then go with a 4-foot wooden fence with a 2-foot lattice in that Section C, which is the section that runs parallel to our house. Now, again, I think the first recommendation of the original line is probably the more appropriate, historically appropriate. But I certainly think the alternate recommendation of the 4-foot fence with the 2-foot lattice in that Section C, and I'm not talking about, I know that Mr. Magrish asked about the rear fence. I'm not really addressing that issue. That's a different matter. I'm just speaking to those sections that are along between 101 and 103. And I don't think that would diminish any security or privacy issues for Candace. I did want to also ask this board for a clarification because in the plat as drawn, it shows that the wall if it were built, would be 5 feet, 5/8 inches off of our wall, which of course is not quite, but almost 6 feet. In the proposal that was submitted by Candace and Mark Grigg for today's consideration, it's proposing that the fence would be built right on the property line, which of course is only 3.5 feet off of the wall. In other words, the property line is about 3.5 off of that, which is basically our den, the window, 3.5 feet, which means it's such a narrow space that if we ever had to go in and do any brickwork with scaffolding, even if we tried to put a ladder up, there's actually a picture here of the dimension. I laid a tape measure along here, and I actually took a photograph just to show you that it is about 3.5 feet.
Sir, I hate to interrupt. Could you grab the grab the microphone if you would. There's a portable.
I'm going to walk in. I do that other places too. I apologize.
Thank you.
But just wanted to illustrate to the board that it's a very narrow space, and if the fence, if a 6-foot high wooden fence is built right along that wall, 3.5 feet off the wall, it's going to make a practical impossibility to try to maintain the mortar. And I also took a picture standing on the line, just looking up at our eaves, and you can kind of get a sense for the sheer physical impossibility trying to get on the ladder to try to do any work on the house. So would ask that if, depending on what this board decides to do in terms of the nature of the fence line, whether it goes back to the original line, whether it goes straight out as has been proposed, that at a minimum that it be set back to allow the 5 feet 5/8 that was provided in the original approval off of the wall, which is within, I mean, it would set it back within our property line, which I know is an inconvenience and probably a concern of Candace, because she would like, I'm sure, to have the fence all the way out. But I think in respect to the historic nature of the neighborhood and the homes, that would be the appropriate spot to locate the fence. I certainly appreciate the board's consideration of this important issue, and I don't know if the board has any questions. I'd be happy to try to respond. Any other questions?
How high are your first-story windows that look towards her property off the ground? The sill height?
Let me look at one of the pictures. Are you asking about the windows across the front?
The windows that would be
Inside?
potentially blocked by the fence, yes.
I apologize. I didn't measure them. Just eyeballing it, they look like they're probably, well, the fence that you can see there is the wooden fence. Well, our wooden fence is 6 foot, so the bottom of the windows looks like about half of that. So approximately 3 foot range, I would guess, for the bottom of the window. Yeah, this is Mr. Winfield's got a good example. That probably shows the relative relationship between the as far as the height. So it's probably a little over maybe 3.5 feet.
We're going to need to put up on.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Along with.
Everything you've given, we can steal from a board member if necessary, and staff does need to kind of look at this too, please.
Again, I apologize for my.
Any other question?
Mr. Stephan, did you have any problem with the original proposal of the brick and stucco wall? Would it be 4 foot solid with the, I guess, the painted steel metalwork that looked like to be gridded under the original proposal?
I think our concern was that it'd be preferable to do what the staff had even originally indicated, to keep the old original wooden fence line that goes perpendicular that's set back 60 feet. There were concerns, the 4-foot with the lattice that's depicted in the purple, if you're looking at that, which is the C-section design, not to be confused, is preferable to a solid 6-foot design, whether it be wood or masonry. The other thing was, as approved previously, as I indicated, the plat shows the wall being 5 foot 5/8 off, rather than my measurement of the property is about 3.5 feet from the wall, our wall, to where that 6-foot high solid fence, which would be, I think, a stark change from the prior approval.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if in the section, was it section C?
Yes, sir.
There's sort of bays. There's sort of a first bay and a second bay. Let's say the first bay is the closest towards the street, and the second bay. If that section was at a 6-foot mark, that is the section you're most concerned with, or is it the whole length of it, those last two bays?
I think both sections of C. As I recall, there's 2 sections of C.
Yeah.
I think both are a concern. Obviously, it's closest for that I don't know if it's the more rear.
Yeah, the second
one, I guess. The one that would only be 3.5 feet off our den window.
Right. But you're okay with the 5 and what?
5 and 5/8.
5/8 that was originally proposed.
I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. I probably will, in order to comply with the staff, if I could borrow.
They've got a full set.
We'll do it afterwards. Okay. I appreciate that. I didn't bring a computer. Follow your suggestion.
He has already shared with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Mr.
Would the applicant or the representative like to respond to any comments? Okay.
Yeah, actually, if you all could come back up, because I have some follow-up questions. What did I just do with it? Oh, there we go. Can you put this picture up? Actually, I don't mean to beat this issue, but 6-foot versus 8-foot fences are broader than just your property right now, so I'm using this to...
I'm sorry, they're what?
6-foot versus 8-foot fences are an issue in a lot of properties right now, and there was one a couple weeks ago.
Times are changing. That's why.
I understand. That's why I'm trying to learn as much as I can and explore all the things. This is a picture that Mr. Seven provided us, and I'll get back to the side fencing in a second, but I wanted to address the rear fencing.
Okay.
Is this the existing fencing today?
Yes.
And that's a 6-foot fence?
Yes.
Okay. So you want to add a similar wood plank fence with another 24 inches on top without the lattice work?
That's what I want.
Is that correct?
For the back.
She would like.
Okay.
That's the submit.
Okay. With respect to the side fence, and perhaps it's my own overlooking something in the application, are you all looking to move the fence line closer to the next door property than what was originally submitted, or to still keep the same distance?
It's the same distance.
Okay, so you'll still want to keep the 5-foot.
It's just inside my property line, which runs,
So there's no issue over keeping it 5 foot. It looks like 5 foot and 5/8 inch from the adjoining. I don't know what the distance is from the property line. I can just tell you.
I think it has to be. I mean, I think there are certain statutes that it has to be 5 feet. And it's hard.
5 and 5/8.
It's 5 and 5/8. I mean, I would definitely be building my fence.
The fence will be built in compliance with the zoning laws as far as back offsets.
Well, yeah, and that's, I don't know what the offset is, and we don't have authority over that as this board. Is what I was just trying to figure out is, are you all trying to move it closer to the property line now, or are you all still saying, we just want to keep the same distance?
We want, yeah,
If there's no issue over that, I just want to make sure there's no issue
right,
on it.
no, that was the same line.
The issue's about the height and the use of the ladder.
And I do need to say that this piece of property is a yard and a half. And I have big plans, gardening plans, and I would like to enclose as much as I can of this extra yard in the back, as, you know, as anyone would, to have a privacy yard with lots of perennial beds and gardens. Which is why I would like to have the new fence brought forward some to enclose more of this yard, which is one of the features of why I bought this property, was that it had a really nice large yard.
On the side yard along here, this was the location of the existing fence. We're proposing in this submittal that we'd like to bring forward.
Have you considered or looked at the option of running a 6-foot fence from the back corner to approximately the location of where the original wood fence split at an angle, and then from that point forward, going with a 4-foot plank and a 2-foot lattice to accommodate sort of all the considerations?
I mean, certainly we've talked about it, but right now, the submittal is, she knows what she would like in a best-case scenario for her, and this is what we're going to present to the board. If you know, that can't be accommodated, then we'll have to reconsider. But at this point, and you know, we have appeal consideration, and those types of avenues available to us. At this point, our submittal is, you know, as stated by Mr. Ginocchio, it's like an 8-foot privacy fence along the back and 6-foot privacy fences along the side.
Are you all in a rush to get the fence installed? Like, are you all ready to start installing next week, or is it
tomorrow?
I mean, you're ready. I'm sure you're ready to do it, but is there some construction reason why you have to have it approved, you know, today to start doing things rather than 2 weeks from now?
Winters, you know, but yes, we're ready to start construction anytime, and weather and the closing of the season is always an issue.
Questions? Anyone else have any questions?
I was wondering if you had possibly considered bringing the fence back just slightly, or is the point where it comes out towards the street pretty much fixed?
Well, again, in this plan, the fence encloses these windows that are on the side yard. The windows that are on the driveway side, she shares a driveway with the next door neighbor.
Right.
It's wide, it's a paved space. They're both lit. The neighbor's looking in there too. It's a little bit more secure. On this side, it's yard, there's bushes, plants, and again, it's a single individual living in the house would like to place the windows along that edge behind the privacy or behind the security fence.
I see. Well, I mean, are you all still open to possible slight design changes to accommodate everybody concerned?
We're going to wait for your determination.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments? Staff?
The only item I'm not clear on is if at the steps, if how that change in grade will happen, if it will each step increase by 8 inches the height, or how we
understand
get there.
Mr. Ginocchio's question would it be a stepped elevation change in the retaining wall along the steps, or would it be 24 inches from the front to the back of the stairs? Yeah, I'm sorry, if you would, please.
Go ahead. I would propose that we do it right behind the retaining wall. In other words, the retaining wall line is continuous, congruous, and then right behind that, we would step it up. So if the wall's 12 inches thick, we would go straight up 20 to 24 inches and return it just into the grade with a cap brick on top as well.
Thank you for the clarification.
Is that it?
I believe so, Mr. Ginocchio. Did you catch that?
We have one more drawing.
So if you want to call those the wing walls, the retaining wall would be 18 inches and the wing walls would be 24.
You're good? Okay. I had the pleasure of hearing this case originally, and remember our discussions about the changes in height, and understand what you're saying tonight. You want us to rule on what you presented as submitted, and I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience this evening and having this discussion with us. If there are no any further questions or comments from anyone, the chair would entertain a motion, please.
Well, just before we get to that.
Sure.
It's probably out of procedure. I know that, everybody involved with this project is obviously doing something to really enhance the neighborhood and really make it a much more attractive and nicer place to be. But it seems like there's sort of a lot of little details that are sort of hanging out there. And it makes it a little hard for me to say, oh, this is right, or this is wrong, or this is compatible, or it's not. It seems like there are certain elements that I think accommodations can be made, and there's other things that really need to stand firm. And I'm afraid that, just as presented, it doesn't give enough information. And I didn't know if there was some procedural way to handle that, basically.
Usually, if the applicant is willing, we can try to negotiate sort of during the meeting and on the fly. But I don't want to speak for you, but I think they've expressed that they're not willing to do that right now, and for us to rule on what they presented to us this evening, and then they'll look at their options after that ruling's been made.
Thank you.
Anyone with a motion?
I would move that it be denied as submitted.
Are you rejecting the staff's recommendations in toto, or?
As the proposal is today, with the proposal as it is with the staff recommendations, that this all be denied today, and that we can comment on it if it's seconded. It may not be.
I believe, if I'm understanding your motion correctly, if you're rejecting all of the staff's recommendations, I believe you'd have to come up with findings to support the rejection of the staff's recommendations. Counsel, is that correct?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did accept the recommendation for the sidewalk, and we've accepted the recommendation for the retaining wall, except for the section.
So I'd rather go have this piecemeal than do the whole thing together.
Yeah, so each item would be considered, the last item, the fence, we'll just, at this time, because there's so much possible variation, we'll just leave that as it is. And we'd like for a determination on the other two.
Okay.
Under the, our submittal and our acceptance of their things this evening. Okay, with the one caveat for the change in the cheek walls.
Well, let me withdraw the motion then. And this may just be procedure. This is a difficult case, and I'm not sure if we can continue discussion without a motion actually being on the floor or not.
Sure.
You can, but it would be fine to put a motion on the floor and then have further discussion if you would like. And could I suggest, in terms of possible options, under the recommendations, you'll see about staff recommends disapproval of the request and has those 3 entries. Your disapproval can concur with the staff in that instance if you are in agreement with those 3 elements. And then, as the applicant has pointed out on the segment where it says staff recommends approval to, that's where he has suggested that they're agreeing with items 2 and 3. So I believe potentially you have item 1 that might be where you as a board, and I'm not trying to tell you what your motion is, I'm just saying as an option, you could take item 1 and handle it as you see fit. But I think you could have parts of this still move forward and be
pass parts and
in accordance with where you're headed.
Okay.
And that will resolve you as a board from starting from the get-go to have findings on everything.
Well, then I guess we can present a motion to disapprove as the staff recommends for the first 3 parts, but with approval and with approval of the recommendations number 2 and 3. Oh,
Deleting perhaps
deleting number 1 right now.
number 1?
Yes. That the wood fence would still be in disapproval.
And so you would need to move that topic to your disapproval category. You need to take action on that topic in your motion. So either as a disapproval, or you could table it. You can table a portion if you were interested in that as an alternative. But I'm hearing that you all would like a vote. That may or may not still be where you are with this. But after your motion's made, you could go ahead and
completely
flesh out further what to do with that.
Respond to that in this forum or another.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with us, new board members here. It's a new deal. So the motion is to approve the staff's recommendations of disapproval of the first, of the 1, 2, and 3, and to approve the staff recommendations 2 and 3, putting 1 on it, tabling number 1.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Any discussion of the motion?
If I could move to amend the motion only insofar as to table the staff recommended disapproval of number 3, I think that is intricately tied into number 1, and that we need to table both of those items to discuss the fence fully. The reason is we are precluded from rehearing an application for a period of 1 year if we deny it, and I would rather we table the entire fence issue to let them come back rather than have to try to, I'm not sure how it would work, piecemealing denial in part, but if there's an issue about whether it will be the same application or not, I'd rather not be in that boat.
If I could also make a comment, I guess if I could trouble you for just a second. It would be my inclination to my fellow board members to recommend accepting the staff's recommendations, which would let the applicant either move forward with an appeals process or to substantially change their application, which would preclude or meet the requirements of new information for a new application. I want to try to accommodate you all as best we can, and I'm afraid that a tabling of an issue would not give you a ruling tonight. It would just continue it on to the next hearing.
Effectively, Justice said you're unable to approve or submit. At this time?
At this time, but it's still sort of out there, and
No one's been able to come up with any additional discussion at this time. So what we'd like to do is just, you're going to concur with the staff's findings for number 2 and number 3 and approve those. We've had a rather robust discussion about the fences in a sense. You're about to hear another case about an 8-foot fence. And, it's obvious that at this time the board's not going to approve this.
And
By tabling it, you're not approving it.
right, but you're also not empowered to make any appeals decisions. You'd have to come back to us again.
Tabled.
Correct. So I want to make sure that.
I would like clarification on 2.
Sure.
You're approving an 18-inch brick wall with 24-inch wing walls?
Well, I'll get there. Just let's
I understand the issue now. If you table it, we can't appeal.
That's
If
correct.
you approve, we can't submit again for 12 months.
unless you have a design change. Yes.
Yeah, you can't submit the identical proposal.
Correct.
But you could submit a modified proposal with your rationale as to the modifications, and the board could consider that's a different application or new information pertaining to the one that has been discussed today.
Absolutely. And I would also, personally, I think that the change in the cheek walls to 24 inches is appropriate to the side. I don't think it's visually dominant, and I don't think it's out of scale with what they're trying to do with the pedestrian entry there.
And staff hearing that as an alternative, I believe that within the guidelines is a reasonable alternative.
Okay.
So
we could amend condition 2 to read 18 inches above the sidewalk or driveway, except for the cheek walls around the stairs leading from the public sidewalk to the private sidewalk.
which may be up to 24 inches, if that's agreeable to you all.
I'll accept that amendment.
Excellent. We'll give the applicants just another moment here to, does anyone, this is a very complex case, and it's not uncommon for the board to rule on different sections of cases and give approval so that an applicant can proceed with construction on certain items and then come back for a determination on another part. Just so you all know.
Is the deadline correct on this, October 28th? Okay.
Concerning the staff's recommendations for the wood fence, we'd like to go ahead and receive a determination and not table the issue.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we'll either need to, there's a motion that's been seconded. We've had some discussion on it, so I think right now we can either go back and start amending the motion or go ahead and act on this motion and seeing, depending on what happens there, if it gets
I
voted
withdraw my
on.
motion to amend.
Let's go ahead and take action on this motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Is this the motion?
This is Mr. Magris's original motion, which is to table item 1 and approve items 2 and 3, while disapproving items 1, 2, and 3.
And was there interest, per your suggested revision of that motion, about item 3 that is relative to the fence on the disapproval segment?
What I'm trying to figure out is where we are. I want to make sure I don't miss that.
Well,
Or
Yeah, I think that,
If there's no amendment to it, you're set to vote on it
I think it'd be
with
cleaner
the
to
8-foot fence being
vote
disapproved.
on this
And that's an option.
and then go back and see if there's if this motion fails to act.
I think it's a better way.
We're okay. So, he had drafted his amendment to the motion. Robert's rules. Sorry, it's getting thick. So, all those in favor of the motion say by saying aye. All those opposed to the motion say nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. Okay, we're ready for a new motion. Is it inappropriate for a chair to make a motion? Okay, well, just to simplify things, I think. I move that we accept the staff's recommendations disapproving the manufactured dimensional stones pavers and the construction of the 8-foot fence. I move that we accept the staff's recommendations to approve a 6-foot wood fence, provided the top 24 inches of the fence is transparent. Amending condition number 2, that the retaining wall be of brick or concrete, no higher than 18 inches above the sidewalk or driveway, except for the cheek walls, which will be 24 inches. And condition 3, leaving it just the way it is. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you all for your patience. The next case this evening, pardon me for just a second here. I've got lost. Is at 323 Clay Avenue, add, change openings, construct porch, drive, and parking areas. That applicant present.
The applicant is not present for 323 Clay Avenue. Everything within it, as you'll see in the materials, staff has recommended concurs with the guidelines with the exception of the windows. It is the board's choice if you wish to proceed on and act on this case or take another action that would result in it being heard when the applicant is present, whichever.
We do have another meeting before the deadline for board action takes place. It would be on my inclination to act on everything but the windows, to give the applicant an opportunity to come to the next meeting and talk about the window issue. That said, double check to see if anyone in the audience would like to speak to this case. If not, I'd certainly entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, with respect to case number 04150323-D, located at 323 Clay Avenue, I would recommend that we approve the staff recommended approval of the request to change openings on the front, rear, and right elevations, construction of the porch and paving of driveway background areas with the following conditions set forth by staff, labeled 1 through 4, in table for next meeting 2 weeks from the date. The staff recommended denial of the request to change the 3 windows to the left of elevation.
Is there a second to the motion? Thank you, Mr. Bell. Second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? I believe that we need an exact date, and if I recall correctly, the next meeting is 8th of October. So just add that in if you're willing.
I will accept that amendment.
Thank you, sir. Any more discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our last case is 223-229 Miller Street in the north side of Sword District. Construct single-family home. I guess if the staff would give the presentation on this one, please. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong.
This is the site of Miller Street, and previously, these two buildings did stand on the site, and the last previous years, they've been, have been approved by this board to be demolished and new construction to be put in the stead. This is the present building, and this was 2 duplexes, and it
Amelia,
consisted-
excuse me, could you pull that mic down some? We're having a little trouble hearing you.
I don't know if this one's on.
Well, then grab the other one, please.
There we go. How's that?
That's much better.
Okay, there we go. Okay, starting again here. This is the site of Miller Street with the buildings as that once stood, and this board has approved these buildings going down. And this is the building in question that went down last year. And this is 2 duplexes, and the proposal now is to construct a single-family home on this lot. To give you some viewpoints of the alley, and the street, excuse me. This is across the street that was approved by this board last year. And this is the site in question now, presently, in its present condition. At this time, the applicant is asking to construct a single-family house with a planter in front, an attached garage, patio fence, and resistant pool in the rear. The 3-story structure is having the dimensions of 47 by 30. Will have a plank form site concrete. Could we see the plans, Randy? The front elevation, please. We're having a form plank site concrete foundation, and the upper 2 floors will consist of wood frame stucco walls with mahogany siding accents on the east and west walls. And I'm going to ask that, do you have the color copies? Yeah, because I didn't have yours. Do that. We're going to switch and use a color set. There we are. This is actually the rear elevation. This will be a form concrete foundation with stucco walls, and these will be vertical mahogany panels with metal railing systems and windows that will be trimmed out in wood. We see the front elevation. Here's the front elevation. The attached garage, the recessed entrance. This wall moves back, and we have a flat roof with a overhang and balconies and a front planter. This is the property line on this side, and this is the property line on this side. It's a very narrow lot and very tight house. The rear yard will consist of a patio and a resistance pool. If we can see a section that will include that, and the proposal calls for a mahogany fence on a painted steel frame over a 48-inch reinforced concrete wall that surrounds the pool and the rear patio area. So here's a section showing the patio area that will consist of concrete pavers, or brick pavers, the pool, and then there will be a concrete, a 48-inch concrete wall with a 6-foot mahogany fence for a total of 8 foot. We can see maybe a floor plan of the whole site, maybe. That's it. This is the erosion plan, but it'll show you the grading. So here is this will be all be of brick pavers with a 40-inch concrete perimeter wall, resistance pool, and then a 6-foot fence on top of that. Guidelines are included for your reference. Historically, this lot was home to 2 duplex structures, and the proposal to construct 1 single-family home on this empty lot is within the guidelines and appropriate for the structure. However, it requires further discussion. Given the lot size of 50 by 45 and the land use zoning requirements, a placement of the structure on this narrow street is within the guidelines. The existing house has had front porches and were situated close to the street. The new building being constructed across the street are close to the street. The structures down the street have a similar close orientation to the street. Guidelines 35-5 state a new building should be placed on its site in compatible relationship to the setbacks and placement of the adjacent surrounding buildings. As proposed, the contemporary design front and rear elevation undulates with the balconies and overhangs fenestration and the indentation of the building form at the northeast corner, creating a visual push and pull that helps soften the height, mass, and scale of the structure. Guidelines 35-1 and 35-7 state contemporary design compatible with adjacent surrounding structures is strongly recommended. New construction which creates an imitation historic sense of history shall be avoided, and the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of new buildings should reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of adjacent surrounding buildings. In addition, the flat roof having larger overhang on the front porch provides a porch-like effect and visually creates a more compatible appearance to the adjacent new building roof line. Guidelines 38-1 states the roofs of the new building should relate in shape, pitch, and materials to the roofs of the adjacent surrounding buildings. The materials stucco and concrete are appropriate to the site and street, and guidelines 41-3 state in areas where strong continuity of materials, textures, and material color is a factor, the continued use of the materials is strongly recommended. As proposed, the balconies on the east and west elevation help to create a more scaled relationship to the adjacent surrounding structures. Guideline 39-2 and 40-2 respectively state porches and decks shall be compatible in scale, materials with the principal structure with the adjacent surrounding buildings, and the architectural details, articulation of the new construction should relate in scale, rhythm, and portion and texture to the adjacent surrounding historic buildings. The fenestration locations are appropriate. Guidelines 36-1 and 32-2 are referenced. The proposal to construct a pool and patio areas within the guidelines and appropriate for the site. Guidelines 12-2 and 15-3 respectively state new site elements or alterations to existing site elements should be compatible with surrounding historic properties and principal and accessory structures on the property. Landscape and land features should not be visually dominant or suggest a false sense of history. Staff asks that the final details of the pool come back to staff when details with the building section are worked out regarding the pool location. Staff acknowledges that this parcel backs up to industrial and commercial buildings. However, this property will be a single-family resident. The construction of an 8-foot fence atop, I would like to change that and make sure that everybody has noted that this is a 6-foot fence atop a 2-foot reinforced concrete wall for the desired effect of 8 feet is not within the guidelines nor appropriate for this single-family residence. Guidelines 12-2 and 13-2 respectively state new site elements and alterations to existing site elements should be compatible with the surrounding historic properties and the principal accessory structures on the property. And new boundary definers or alterations to the existing boundary definers should be compatible with surrounding historic properties and principal accessory locations of the property. Staff suggests the wall fence to be a total of 6 feet. Staff recommends approval of the following conditions: final pool locations and details be submitted to staff, and the rear fence wall be 6 feet in lieu of the 8 feet.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong.
And the applicant is present.
Sir, if you'd like to come forward again.
Could I do that clarification about the address before you start? You'll notice that on your agenda it has one address, and on your staff report it has a range. This has historically been 4 parcels that have been merged into one, and the applicant has explained that there's not been a formalization of that 227, but that is to be its true legal address. So either way, we're good, but just so in case you had any confusion, that's the skinny on that situation.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Sir, I assume you have you're still yourself.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. I believe you indicated earlier that you'd like to discuss the fence height.
I would like to discuss that.
Certainly, if you...
First of all, I want to clarify that the fence is 8 feet tall. It's 4 feet of poured concrete wall and 4 feet of wood fence above it. And I think your section drawing should reflect that in the drafted sheets. I understand the historic regulation is typically 6 feet. I'm asking that it be 8 feet, which is compliant with the Kentucky Residential Code. And I'm asking that it be 8 feet because the property, which is zoned R3, abuts on 3 sides of B4 Industrial Warehouse property, 2 sides of which are the property that burned 2 months ago. And then to the front, it of course abuts the right-of-way of the street there. And the properties that are on the 2 sides and the rear are actually not within a historic district. I'm the only property on this side of the street that is within the boundaries of the north side neighborhood. So I don't actually have neighbors on that side that are historic in that sense. They're only industrial. So I guess it's for that reason mostly that I would just request that it be 8 feet. But I'll understand your findings there. I just wanted to ask a question about putting the issue of the placement of the pool on hold for now. The staff report made that request until issues on the placement of the pool are worked out with building inspection. I don't know what the official mechanism by which building inspection weighs in with you guys or what you're administrating under.
I believe that actually is not a hold, but just final details come back.
Okay.
And if there are any questions that the staff cannot address or doesn't feel comfortable addressing at their level, then it would come back to us. Otherwise, the staff is empowered to make
Okay.
this work.
So I guess I'm just asking the question is, am I asking to approve everything but not the pool tonight, or?
What we can do is we'll just add a condition that all final details come back to staff prior to issuance of the COA.
To staff and not the board?
Right. And again, if staff has an issue that they don't feel comfortable with or are not empowered to address, then it would come back to us.
Okay.
On that pool issue, staff talks to building inspection about, any red flags about various projects so that we don't approve things that can't be built per the codes and so on. And there was some discussion evidently, and Amelia knows all the details, but about the placement of the pool relative to the property line fence. Evidently, you're not, by code, allowed to have it such that you could climb the fence and dive into the pool. It needs to be physically not possible to accomplish that. So that's part of the rationale of why just to have the language in the approval to allow there to be some adjustment if necessary relative to the codes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hosfield, do you have any comments or questions for the applicant?
Not at this time.
Mr. Billings?
I probably should have been more outspoken earlier in our session tonight than I have been, but regarding 8-foot fences, we didn't really talk about that much. This is I've only been on the board about a month, and this is the 3rd case that's come before us with an 8-foot fence. There's actually one that came in July that came back before the board after I came on it. So we talked earlier about this is not a new issue. I think that under the guidelines, we have to look at the locale of the property to see if there's other neighboring properties that have similar fences along the street and things like that to see what the heights are. I've walked down Miller Street probably twice a day for the last 4 months, and there are at least 3 properties, if not 4 or 5, that have 7-foot or 7.5-foot fences on here. Maybe even 8. Some of them may even be a lot on the west side, maybe be taller than 8 feet because it seems like there's a retaining wall there. I don't have any problem with the 8-foot fence being there as long as that's can be approved by code next to industrial property. I don't know whether it does or doesn't, but as long as it's approved by code, which you'll have to get by building inspection or your fence permit anyway, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, security is one of the things. A lot of the fences are older, are 8 feet. There's some areas where 6-foot fences are appropriate and 8-foot fences are not appropriate. I think in this case, the finding that looking at neighboring properties on Miller, you have to look at each property on a case-by-case basis to see neighboring things, but I think that a fence of that height is appropriate there.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Mr. Magrish?
I concur. I think that the fence issue, partially because of the fact of the two different materials and the fact it's not just a single plane, breaks up the visual impact of an overall fence. But in this particular location, I think that it is appropriate, and it certainly is appropriate with the structure that's being presented. And just as a side thing, I think the structure is a very nice example of infill architecture.
Thank you.
Mr. Housefield? You good?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case? Staff have any additional comments? Okay, chairs would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to case number 132000229-C, which is submitted as 223 to 229 Miller Street, also known as 227 Miller Street, I would move that we approve the application as submitted, which would include the 8-foot fence consisting of a 4-foot concrete masonry base with a 4-foot top mahogany wood structure, be approved with the final pool location and details to be submitted to staff as recommended by the staff.
Before I ask for a second, Mr. Billings, I believe that you'll have to come up with some findings to support the...
To change it, thank you. If you look at the guidelines, they, with respect to guidelines 12.2 and 13.3, I'm sorry, 13.2, they reflect that new site elements should be compatible with surrounding historic properties and principal accessory structures on the property, as well as new boundary definers or alterations to the boundary should be compatible with surrounding historic properties. And looking at the property and location with respect to the other ones on Miller Street, I believe that supports the finding of the fence of 8 foot stated in my motion is appropriate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Billings.
Making this motion are noting the industrial nature of the neighborhood, because I think that was your reasoning.
Thank you. Yes, that is part of my reasoning. The other is there's also a number of residential lots on this that have 7-foot or 8-foot wood fences. The industrial is a component of the consideration of the two guidelines as well as the other residential lots. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? I would also echo Mr. Magrish's comments. This is exactly what, in my opinion, Lexington infill needs. Good contemporary design that's complementary to the site and to the district, and it's a great project, and I thank you for your innovative design.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have one other item of business tonight. It is time to elect officers, and if I could ask you three gentlemen to form to be the nominating committee, and at our and sometime between now and our next hearing, have a slate for chair and vice chair for us to take action on. And that said, if there's nothing else.
Do we have approval of minutes? I didn't see any in the packet.
Not this time.
I know sometimes you all get busy, so I just didn't see one, so I didn't want us to overlook it.
It's not your imagination. You'll have a double whammy next time.
Thanks.
If there's no other business, the chair would entertain a motion for adjournment. Anyone?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Sorry, that was a very difficult call. That wasn't